She used trauma to excuse betrayal. I brought receipts, her soulmate, and the kind of revenge you can't delete. The scent of lavender always made me think of Diana. My older sister used to wear that specific perfume, Lavande de Provence, imported, very expensive, and left a trail of it wherever she went. Today, standing at the door of the Riverside Country Club ballroom in Charleston, South Carolina, that scent made me feel nauseous. Inside, 200 people celebrated Diana's 40th birthday. White and gold balloons, French champagne, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. Everything perfect. Everything impeccable. Everything a lie. In my Prada bag, an anniversary gift from my husband Ryan 2 years ago, ironically, I carried a tablet. Inside that tablet were 6 months of meticulous investigation. Timestamps, photos, surveillance videos, hotel records, text messages recovered by a digital forensics specialist who charged $15,000 but was worth every penny. And by my side was Jackson Hayes. Tall, dark hair with graying temples, green eyes that were once kind but now carried the same kind of sharp pain I felt. Jackson, the man Diana destroyed 5 years ago. The man she left at the altar, literally, because she couldn't handle commitment due to her unresolved trauma. "Are you ready?" Jackson asked, his voice low, controlled. No, I would never be ready to destroy my own sister in front of all of Charleston society, but I was ready for the truth, and sometimes the truth demands destruction. "Let's go," I said. We walked in together, and the world didn't immediately stop. Some heads turned. Jackson Hayes was known in Charleston, and his presence at any of Diana's events was unexpected. But most people continued chatting, laughing, drinking champagne at $150 a bottle. My eyes found Ryan first. My husband of 12 years was near the bar, talking to Diana's brother, our cousin Thomas. Ryan looked tired. He always looked tired lately. I used to think it was work. He was a cardiovascular surgeon. The hours were brutal. Now I knew better. Then I saw Diana. My sister at 40 was stunning. Platinum blonde hair falling in perfect waves, royal blue silk dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, a radiant smile as she received greetings. The perfect victim. The survivor. The strong woman who overcame so much trauma. Except she hadn't overcome anything. She had just learned to use her pain as a weapon. There are people who carry trauma as scars, and there are people who carry trauma as shields, something to hide behind, something to justify any behavior, no matter how cruel. Diana was the second. Mom appeared beside me, holding a glass of white wine. Catherine Carter, at 68, was still elegant, with gray hair styled in a French twist and that emerald necklace Dad gave her before he died. "Melissa, darling, you came." She hugged me, then saw Jackson. Her smile faltered. "Jackson, I didn't know you were on the guest list." "I wasn't," Jackson said politely. "Melissa invited me as her plus one." Mom's eyes moved between us, confusion giving way to concern. "Melissa, what's going on?" "Mom," I said softly, "in a few minutes, you'll understand everything. And it will be horrible. But I need you to know that I love you and that none of this is your fault." She opened her mouth to reply, but Diana saw us. I saw the exact moment she registered my presence and Jackson's. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened. And then, like the consummate actress she was, she composed her face and walked over to us. "Mel!" She hugged me, and I let her, even though every cell in my body screamed to pull away. "You came, and Jackson," she turned to him, and there was something calculated in her eyes now. "What a surprise to see you here." "Diana," Jackson said, and his tone was pure ice. "Happy birthday." The silence between us was heavy, laden with unspoken things. Diana looked at me, trying to read my face, searching for clues. Always so smart, always 3 steps ahead. But not this time. "Diana," I said, my voice too calm, We need to talk. You, me, Ryan, Mom, and a few other important people. Now. Now? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Mel, it's my party. Can't we do this later? No, I said. It can't wait. Because if it waits another minute, I'm going to scream. And you don't want me to scream in front of all these guests, do you? Something flashed in her eyes. Fear, panic. But then she smiled. That victim smile she had perfected over the years. Melissa, you're scaring me. What happened? Are you okay? And there it was, the performance, the fake concern, the loving sister. Private lounge, Jackson said, his voice cutting through the pretense. Now, Diana, or Melissa tells everything right here. Diana looked around, guests starting to notice the tension, whispers spreading. She calculated quickly. Damage control. Always damage control. Of course, she said, her smile still in place. She signaled to Ryan, who approached with a confused expression. Diana, what's going on? I don't know, Diana said, and her voice had that shaky quality now. Melissa wants to talk about something urgent. Can you come with us? Ryan looked at me, and I saw guilt in his eyes. He knew. On some level, he knew the game was over. We walked in silence to the office, an elegant space with mahogany walls and windows overlooking the gardens. Diana closed the door, and the sound was like a coffin closing. So, Diana began, and her voice was already taking on that victim tone. Is someone going to explain what's happening? Why are you scaring me like this on my own birthday? I took the tablet from my bag, placed it on the mahogany table, opened the first folder. Because, I said calmly, for 3 years you slept with my husband, and during those 3 years, every time I suspected, every time I questioned, you used your trauma as an excuse. I'm going through a hard time, Mel. You know how hard my childhood was. I need support now, not accusations. The silence that followed was absolute. Diana was pale. Ryan looked like he was going to vomit. Mom had her hand over her mouth, tears already forming. Melissa, Diana began, but I raised my hand. No, you had 3 years to speak. Now it's my turn. I turned the tablet so everyone could see. This is a photo of the two of you entering the Belmont Charleston Place Hotel, March 14th of this year, room receipt in Ryan Mitchell's name. You ordered champagne and strawberries to the room. Romantic. I moved to the next image. This is from May 22nd, dinner at Peninsula Grill. You sat in the darkest corner, but the security camera caught you kissing between courses. One more. June 7th. Ryan said he had a medical conference in Atlanta. Diana said she was visiting a friend in Savannah. You went to Kiowa Island, stayed at the Sanctuary Hotel, Ocean View Room, 3 nights. There's a difference between suspecting and knowing. Suspecting keeps you up at night, questioning your sanity. Knowing frees you. Not because it hurts less, but because you can finally stop doubting yourself. Diana was crying now. Real tears or performative, I could no longer tell. Mel, I can explain. Can you? My voice was dangerously calm. Can you explain how you manipulated our entire family? How you used the abuse you suffered from our father? Real abuse, real trauma, as an excuse to do whatever you wanted without consequences? You don't understand, Diana began, but Jackson cut in. She understands perfectly, he said, because you did the same thing to me, Diana. 5 years ago, when you left me at the altar, you said it was because your trauma wouldn't allow you to commit, that you needed time to heal. And I believed you. I spent years blaming myself for not being patient enough. He took a step forward. But the truth is, you were already sleeping with someone else, with Marcus, your brother's best friend. And when he confronted you, when he said he was going to tell me, you accused him of harassment, destroyed his reputation, made everyone believe he was the monster. Diana was trembling now. That's not true. It is, I said, because I found Marcus. He lives in Boston now, and he told me everything, and gave me the messages you sent him, the threats, the manipulations, everything. I turned the tablet again. But that's not even the worst part, Diana. The worst part is this. It was a transcript of a conversation between Diana and Ryan, recovered by my forensic specialist from deleted messages on Ryan's phone. I read aloud. Ryan, I can't lie to her anymore. Melissa doesn't deserve this. Diana, do you think I deserve it? You know what I've been through. You know how hard it is for me to trust anyone. If you leave me now, I don't know what I'll do. I don't know if I can keep living. I looked at Diana. You threatened suicide. You used your trauma, your real pain, to keep my husband trapped in an affair he wanted to end. You manipulated him the same way you manipulated me, the same way you manipulated Jackson, Marcus, probably others I don't even know about. Mom was sobbing now. Ryan had his hand over his head. Diana was leaning against the wall, all her composure crumbling. And the best part, I said, my voice finally breaking. The best part is that I spent months blaming myself, thinking I was the bad sister for suspecting, that I was being insensitive to your trauma, that I should be more understanding. Tears streamed down my face now, but my voice was firm. But trauma is not an excuse for cruelty, Diana. Trauma does not give you the right to destroy the people who love you. And you didn't use your trauma to heal, you used it as a weapon. The silence that followed was broken only by Mom's sobs. Diana slid down the wall to sit on the floor, her blue silk dress spread around her like a puddle. She looked small suddenly, broken. But I felt no pity. Not yet. Maybe never. Because some betrayals are too deep for immediate forgiveness, and some people use their pain not to heal, but to hurt. And Diana had done both for far too long. Ryan was the first to speak, his voice hoarse with suppressed emotion. Melissa, God, I don't even know where to begin. How about at the beginning? My voice came out colder than I intended. When exactly did you decide that sleeping with my sister was a good idea? He flinched as if I had slapped him. Good. He deserved to feel at least a fraction of the pain I felt. It was 3 years ago, he said, looking at the floor, at Uncle George's funeral. Diana was having a breakdown, crying in the garden, saying she couldn't breathe, that the memories of your father were suffocating her. And there was the pattern. Diana always chose moments of vulnerability, funerals, holidays, family crises, to weave her webs. When people's defenses were down, when they were more likely to comfort than to question. I went to comfort her, Ryan continued. Just that. I swear it was just that. But then she kissed me, and He stopped, running his hands through his hair. I didn't stop. God help me, I didn't stop. Why? The question came from Mom, her voice broken. Ryan, why? You loved Melissa, I know you did. I do, he said, and there was desperation in his voice now. I always have. But Diana, she made me feel needed, like I was the only one who could save her. And the more I tried to end it, the more he looked at Diana, who was still on the floor, the more she threatened to hurt herself, said I was the only thing keeping her alive. Jackson let out a bitter laugh. She did the same thing to me, word for word. It's part of her script. Diana lifted her head, and her eyes were red, swollen, but there was something else there now. Anger. You don't understand. None of you understand what it's like to carry what I carry, what Dad did to me. No, I cut in, my voice sharp as glass. Don't do that, Diana. Don't use the abuse you suffered, real trauma, to justify the abuse you caused. Dad was a monster. He hurt you in ways no child should be hurt. And I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry for that. I walked over to her, knelt down so we were at the same level. But you're not a child anymore, Diana. You're a 40-year-old woman who had access to therapy, resources, support. And instead of using all that to heal, you used your trauma as an excuse to hurt other people. You don't know what it's like, Diana whispered. You don't, because Dad never touched you. You were his favorite, the perfect daughter. And there it was, the wound beneath the wound, the reasons beneath the reasons. Mom sobbed loudly. Diana, no, your father didn't have favorites. He was sick. He hurt you in unforgivable ways, but Melissa wasn't to blame. Wasn't she? Diana looked at me, and there were decades of resentment in her eyes. She had everything. His love, his attention, while I was just the broken toy in the basement. And finally, the truth emerged. It wasn't about Ryan. It wasn't about Jackson or Marcus or any other man. It was about me. It was always about me. I was the sister who escaped the abuse, and she never forgave me for it. So you decided to destroy me? I said softly. Decided that if you couldn't have a happy childhood, peace, genuine love, then neither could I? I didn't decide anything, Diana screamed. I just wanted something that was mine, something you didn't have first. And Ryan, she looked at him, Ryan saw me, heard me, didn't treat me like broken porcelain. Because he didn't know the truth, Jackson said. You didn't tell him about Marcus, about me, about all the others you manipulated. You built a narrative where you were the eternal victim, and Ryan believed it, because good men want to believe they can save wounded women. Ryan looked at Jackson. Are you saying it was all a lie? That she wasn't really... Her trauma is real, I interrupted. The abuse she suffered was real. But the way she uses it, the manipulation, the suicide threats, that's calculated, Ryan. That's a choice. I opened another folder on the tablet. Do you want to know how I know? Because I hired a private investigator, and he found out that Diana has been in regular therapy for 15 years. Therapy that our mother pays for. Therapy where, according to records I legally accessed through a court order, she admits to using her trauma as a manipulation tool to get what she wants. The silence was deafening. You invaded my medical records? Diana whispered, and there was genuine horror in her voice now. With a court order, I repeated, because when you repeatedly threaten suicide, it becomes a public health matter, and a judge agreed there was sufficient cause to investigate whether you were truly a danger to yourself or if you were using threats as manipulation. I showed her the document. Your therapist, Dr. Morrison, documented in a session on January 14th of this year, 3 months ago, and I quote, patient demonstrates clear awareness that she uses trauma narrative to manipulate relationships. When confronted about behavior pattern, patient laughed and said, it works, so why stop? Mom was pale as paper. This can't be true. Diana, tell me this isn't true. But Diana said nothing, just looked at the floor, tears silently streaming down her face. There's more, I continued, because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it completely. Diana isn't just sleeping with Ryan. She's also having an affair with James Sullivan, your husband, Diana, the man you've been married to for 8 years. What? Ryan stood up so fast his chair fell. You said your marriage was dead, that James was cold, distant, that you only stayed with him out of convenience. More lies, Jackson said. James is a good man, works 60 hours a week as a corporate lawyer to give her the lifestyle she wants. And she cheats on him with her brother-in-law while making him believe it's his problem. I looked at Diana. James knows, by the way. I told him 2 weeks ago. Showed him the same evidence. And do you know what he said? Diana lifted her eyes, terror in them now. He said he always knew you had affairs, but that every time he tried to confront you, you threatened to kill yourself. So he stayed quiet, worked harder, tried to be better, thinking that if he was good enough, you would stop. Tears streamed down my face now, but my voice was firm. You didn't just destroy my marriage, Diana. You destroyed your own. You destroyed Jackson. You destroyed Marcus. How many people need to bleed for you to feel better about your pain? I didn't want to hurt anyone, Diana sobbed. I just wanted to stop hurting. Then you should have healed, Mom said, and her voice was different now, harder. You should have used the therapy, the resources, the love I gave you to heal. Not to become, she stopped, swallowing hard, not to become like your father. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Diana looked at Mom as if she had been slapped. I'm not like him, she whispered. No? Mom walked over to her. Your father used love as a weapon, used vulnerability to control, made you believe everything was your fault, that you deserved the pain. And you? Her voice broke. You're doing the exact same thing. Only instead of using physical force, you use emotional manipulation. There's a type of abuse that perpetuates through generations, not because victims want to become abusers, but because unhealed pain turns into poison, and poison always finds a way to leak out. Diana was trembling violently now. No, I'm not. I never wanted to. But you are, Jackson said softly, and the saddest part is that you know it. Your therapist knows it. Melissa found out. And yet, you continue, because it's easier to be the eternal victim than to do the hard work of truly healing. Ryan was sitting now, head in his hands. I'm such an idiot, such an incredible idiot. You were manipulated, I said, and surprised myself with the gentleness in my voice, by someone who is very, very good at manipulating. That doesn't excuse what you did. It doesn't erase the betrayal. But, I took a deep breath, but I understand how you got here. He looked at me, and there was desperate hope in his eyes. Melissa, is there any chance, any way to fix this? I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I don't even know if I want to fix it. I just know I can't live in the lie anymore. I looked around the room, at Diana, broken on the floor, at Ryan, broken in the chair, at Mom with a broken heart, at Jackson, who finally had validation for his own pain. If you're enjoying this story, I said, my voice stronger now, like and subscribe to the channel. Share in the comments if you've been through something similar, because emotional manipulation is abuse, and it deserves to be exposed. The office door suddenly opened. James Sullivan walked in, still in his suit after a day of work, his tie loosened and eyes tired. He stopped when he saw the scene. His wife on the floor, Ryan visibly distraught, me with the tablet of evidence, Jackson by my side. So it's today, he said, calmly. You said it would be today. Diana lifted her head. James, what are you doing here? Melissa invited me, he replied, his voice strangely calm for a man about to confront his wife's infidelity. She told me everything 2 weeks ago, showed me the evidence, and gave me a choice: show up today and finally face the truth, or continue pretending I don't know my marriage is a farce. He walked to the bar in the corner of the office, poured himself a generous scotch. I chose the truth. I'm tired of lies. James, I can explain, Diana began, but he raised his hand. No, you had 8 years to explain. 8 years where I worked like a dog, trying to be the perfect husband, thinking that if I was good enough, you would stop cheating on me. He drank the scotch in one go. But it wasn't about me being good enough, was it? It never was. You don't understand me, Diana said, her voice taking on that shaky quality again. You don't know what I went through. I know exactly what you went through, James cut in. You told me on our 3rd date about the abuse, about your father, about how you struggled to trust, to feel safe. And his voice broke. I promised I would protect you, that it would be different. He looked at her with a mix of pain and anger. But you didn't want protection, Diana. You wanted an excuse, someone to blame when your choices had consequences. There's a difference between someone who struggles with their trauma and someone who weaponizes it. The former seeks healing, even when it's difficult. The latter uses pain as both shield and sword simultaneously. Mom sat down heavily in a chair. James, I didn't know. If I had known she was... Catherine, you're a good mother, James said gently, but you protected her too much. Every time Diana did something questionable, you justified it. She's going through a hard time. You know how deep her trauma is. You taught her there was always an excuse. He turned to Diana. And you learned well. You learned that if you cried enough, if you threatened to hurt yourself, if you invoked the ghost of your father, people would back down. They would give you what you wanted. That's not fair, Diana whispered. No, I stepped closer, opening another folder on the tablet. Then explain this. An email you sent to Ryan 6 months ago. If you leave me, I don't know what I'll do. You know I have dark thoughts. You know I've tried before. I looked at her. Except you never tried, Diana. I checked. There are no medical records of suicide attempts, no psychiatric hospitalizations, nothing but empty threats used to keep people trapped. How dare you? Diana stood up, and there was fury in her eyes now. How dare you question my pain, my suffering? I'm not questioning your pain, I said calmly. I'm questioning what you do with it, because pain doesn't give you the right to destroy other people. Jackson took a step forward. Diana, do you remember what you told me when I confronted you about Marcus? You said you were going to jump off the Ravenel Bridge, that you were going to end it all. And I believed you. I spent 3 days without sleep, afraid that you really would. But you didn't, he continued, because it wasn't about really hurting yourself. It was about controlling me, keeping me in line. And it worked. I walked away, left you alone, and you continued with your life as if nothing had happened. Diana was trembling, but not from fear or sadness now. It was anger, pure anger at being exposed. You don't understand anything, she hissed. None of you have been through what I've been through. None of you know what it's like to live with these memories, these nightmares. You're right, I interrupted. I haven't been through what you've been through, and I'm sorry for that. Genuinely sorry. But do you know who else has been through trauma? Mom. She lived with a man who abused his daughter and didn't know. She carries that guilt every day. And do you know what she did with that pain? She went to therapy, worked on herself, learned to forgive herself. She didn't use it as an excuse to hurt other people. Jackson was left at the altar, publicly humiliated, had to explain to 200 guests why the bride didn't show up. And do you know what he did? He healed. He moved on. He didn't use it as an excuse to destroy future relationships. I walked over to Diana, and my voice was softer now, but no less firm. Trauma is not a competition, Diana. It's not about who suffered more. It's about what you do with the suffering, and you chose to use yours as a weapon. There's a moment in every confrontation where the exposed person has a choice. They can continue denying, building more lies, or they can finally, painfully, look in the mirror and see who they've become. Diana was at that moment now. Diana looked around the room, at the husband she betrayed, at the lover she manipulated, at the sister she destroyed, at the mother she disappointed, at the ex-fiancé she abandoned, and something in her face changed. You want me to say I'm a monster? Her voice was different now, harder, more real. You want me to admit I used my trauma as an excuse? Fine, I admit it. She stood up, wiped the tears from the back of her hand. I knew what I was doing. Every time I invoked my father's name, every time I threatened to hurt myself, I knew exactly what I was doing. And it worked. It always worked. Diana, Mom began, but Diana cut in. No, Mom. You want the truth? Here it is. I hated Melissa since we were 5 and 7, since the day I realized Dad never touched me when she was around, that he waited for you to leave, waited for her to sleep, to come to my room. She looked at me, and there were decades of resentment in her eyes. And I hated you for being the lucky one, for escaping, for having a normal childhood while mine was stolen every night. So when we grew up, when I was finally free of him, I decided you didn't deserve to have everything, didn't deserve the perfect husband, the perfect life, the perfect peace, not when I never had any of those things. The silence that followed was absolute. Mom was sobbing. Ryan looked like he was going to vomit. James just drank another scotch, as if he expected exactly this. So you slept with my husband for revenge, I said. Not for love, not out of need, for revenge. At first, yes, Diana admitted, but then I liked it. I liked having something that was yours. I liked knowing that every time you kissed Ryan, he was thinking of me. I liked the power. And there was the naked truth. There was no beautiful justification. No trauma that fully explained it. There was just choice. Choice after choice after choice to hurt instead of heal. And James, her husband spoke, his voice dangerously low. Was I just part of the revenge, too? Diana looked at him, and for the first time, I saw something that might be genuine remorse. No, you were real. I loved you. I still love you. But it wasn't enough, because love is never enough when you're broken the way I am. You're not broken, I said. You were broken by a monster who should have protected you. But you chose to stay broken. You chose to use your cracks to cut other people instead of letting them heal. I opened the last folder on the tablet. And this is my favorite part, Diana. Remember when you said your therapist was helping you, that you were working on yourself? I showed her the document. Dr. Morrison contacted me 3 weeks ago. Said he was violating doctor-patient confidentiality, but that his conscience no longer allowed him to stay quiet. He said you come to him not to heal, but to learn how to manipulate better. That you treat therapy like acting lessons. Diana paled. He can't. That's illegal. He can when there's a risk of harm to others, I corrected, and a judge agreed that your pattern of behavior constituted a risk. Dr. Morrison is willing to testify in any legal action I want to pursue. Lawsuit, Diana whispered. Alienation of affection, James said. It's legal in South Carolina. I can sue Ryan for destroying my marriage, and I will. Ryan lifted his head, panic in his eyes. James, You slept with my wife for 3 years, James cut in. You're a doctor, respected, rich, and you will pay, literally. He looked at Diana. And you will sign the divorce papers my lawyer prepared. No fight, no drama, or I expose everything publicly. Every lie, every manipulation, every affair. And in Charleston, reputation is everything. You wouldn't do that, Diana said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Try me, James replied. I looked at Diana, my sister, my betrayer, my victim who became an abuser, and felt emptiness. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness where love used to be. I didn't come here for revenge, I said finally. I came for truth. Because I spent 3 years thinking I was crazy, that I was being paranoid, that my marriage was failing because of me. But it wasn't my fault. It was yours. And I needed everyone to know. I needed you to no longer be able to hide behind your trauma, your tears, your threats. I closed the tablet. Now everyone knows, and you're going to have to live with that. The door opened again, and this time it was Marcus Chen, tall, Asian American with thin-rimmed glasses and a serious expression. The man Diana had accused of harassment 5 years ago. The man whose reputation she destroyed. Sorry I'm late, he said, looking around the room. His eyes landed on Diana, and something complex crossed his face. Boston to Charleston traffic is brutal. Diana turned white as paper. Marcus, what are you doing here? He said calmly. Said it was time for the truth to finally come out. He walked to the center of the room, took a folder from his backpack. These are message records between Diana and me from 5 years ago, recovered by a forensic specialist. Messages she deleted, but that I managed to prove existed. He opened the folder, began to read. Message from Diana to me, June 3rd, 2020. I know you're going to tell Jackson about us, but if you tell him, I'll say you forced me. Who do you think people will believe? The weird Asian friend or the traumatized fiancé? The silence was deafening. Mom had her hand over her mouth. James closed his eyes, as if in physical pain. Marcus continued, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't tell. I stayed quiet, because I was scared. Scared that she really would do it. Scared that no one would believe me. He looked at Diana. And I was right to be scared. Because when Jackson found out on his own, when he confronted me, you did exactly what you threatened. You accused me of harassment. You have no proof of that, Diana said, but her voice was weak. I do, Marcus replied, because I recorded our last conversation. The one where you admitted you were lying, but said it didn't matter because no one would believe me anyway. He placed a small recorder on the table. I want everyone to hear this. He pressed play. Diana's voice came from the speakers, clear as crystal. Marcus, do you really think anyone will believe you? You're the strange friend who was always staring at me. I'm the abuse victim trying to rebuild her life. If I say you harassed me, it's my word against yours. And my word comes with tears and trauma. Yours comes with, what? Denial? Her laugh on the recording was cruel. Be smart. Stay quiet. Go away. And maybe I won't completely destroy your life. Marcus turned off the recorder. So I did. I went to Boston, changed careers, spent 5 years rebuilding my life. And every time someone asked why I left Charleston so suddenly, I lied, said it was a work opportunity, because I was too afraid to tell the truth. He looked at Jackson. And you? You believed her. You cut me completely out of your life, called me a monster, said you never wanted to see me again. Jackson had tears streaming down his face. Marcus, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Nobody knew, Marcus said, because Diana is very good at making people believe her. She knows exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit. This was the true devastation of what Diana did. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she destroyed people's ability to trust in themselves, in others, in reality itself. She didn't just lie. She made you question your sanity. Diana was trembling violently now, leaning against the wall like a cornered animal. You don't understand. I was scared. Marcus was threatening to tell Jackson everything. I never threatened, Marcus cut in. I begged you to tell the truth, to end the affair before the wedding, not to destroy Jackson the way you were about to. And you responded by destroying me first, he continued, his voice growing stronger. You used my gender, my race, all the stereotypes that exist about Asian men being weird or predatory, and weaponized everything against me. Mom stood up, walked over to Diana. Enough. Enough lies. Enough manipulation. Enough using your trauma as a shield. She held Diana's face, forcing her to look into her eyes. I failed you. I know that. I should have seen what your father was doing, should have protected you, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But you're not a defenseless child anymore, Diana. You're an adult woman who had resources, therapy, love, support, and you chose to use all that not to heal, but to hurt. Tears streamed down Mom's face now, and I can no longer protect you from the consequences of your choices. Not when those consequences include destroying your sister, your husband, innocent men. Diana sobbed, gripping Mom's hands. Mom, please, I need help. I know I need help. You always needed help, Mom said softly, but you refused. Every time a therapist truly challenged you, you switched. Every time someone tried to make you face your actions, you threatened to hurt yourself. She let go of Diana's face, took a step back. But now you will get help, real help, not therapy you control, intensive treatment. And if you refuse, her voice broke, if you refuse, I can no longer have you in my life. I can't watch you destroy more people. Are you abandoning me? Diana whispered, horror in her voice. I'm loving you enough to say no, Mom replied. For the first time in your life, I'm loving you enough not to protect you from the consequences. Ryan stood up, walked over to me. Melissa, there are no words, no apologies big enough, but I need you to know, I'll go to any therapy you want, I'll answer any question, I'll do anything to try to fix this. I looked at him, the man I married 12 years ago, the man who swore to love and protect me, the man who slept with my sister for 3 years. I don't know if it can be fixed, Ryan, I said honestly. I don't know if I want to fix it. Because every time I look at you now, I see her. I see the betrayal. I see the years of lies. I understand, he said, and there was acceptance in his voice. But I'll be here, waiting, working on myself, because you deserve better than the man I was, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become the man you deserved from the beginning. Jackson approached Marcus. I owe you apologies that words cannot express. I believed her. I cut you off. I called you unforgivable things. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. You were manipulated, just like Ryan, just like James, just like Melissa. She's very good at what she does. But that doesn't excuse it, Jackson said. I should have questioned, should have investigated, should have trusted you, my friend of years, instead of blindly believing her. No, Marcus said softly. You loved her, and love makes you blind. I understand that now better than I did then. He extended his hand. But maybe we can start over. Not as we were, that's gone, but as something new. Jackson shook his hand, pulled him into a hug. I'd like that. There's a form of healing that comes not from forgiveness, but from witness, from finally having your truth seen, validated, believed. Marcus was healing not because Jackson apologized, but because finally, after 5 years, someone believed him. Diana was on the floor now, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't want to be like this. I didn't want to become this. But you did, I said, and my voice was tired now. And now you have to decide. Do you stay this, the woman who uses trauma as a weapon, who destroys people because she is destroyed? Or do you finally, truly do the work of healing? What if I can't, Diana whispered. What if I'm too broken? No one is too broken to heal, Mom said, but you have to want to, truly want to, not pretend you want to while continuing to do the same things. James placed papers on the table. These are divorce papers, and these, he placed other papers, are admission papers for an intensive treatment program in Atlanta. 60 days, inpatient, real therapy with therapists who won't accept your manipulations. You will sign both, he said, his voice firm, or I expose everything publicly, every lie, every manipulation. And in Charleston, you know what that means. Diana looked at the papers, then at us. What if I do it? If I go for treatment? Is there any chance of ever having my family back? Mom looked at me. I looked at Jackson. Jackson looked at Marcus. We all had the same expression. Tiredness, pain, but maybe a spark of hope. Maybe, I said finally, if you truly heal, if you truly change, if you stop using your trauma as an excuse and start using it as motivation to be better. But it won't be easy, Jackson added, and it won't be fast, and you'll have to prove every day that you're truly different. Diana picked up the pen with trembling hands, signed the divorce papers, then, after a long pause, signed the admission papers. I'll try, she whispered. I swear I'll try. Good, Mom said, picking up the papers, because this is your last chance. There won't be another. I looked around the room, at the broken people, at the truths finally exposed, at the painful beginning of something that might, eventually, resemble healing. And I realized that revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about truth. It was about finally, after years of lies, shining a light into every dark corner. And sometimes that light burns, but it also purifies. 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in Charleston, looking out at the harbor through the window. The smell of espresso and freshly baked croissants filled the air. It was a January morning, cold but sunny, the kind of day that made you believe in new beginnings. My phone vibrated. A message from Mom. Diana completed the program in Atlanta. She's living in a small apartment, volunteering at a crisis center. Asked to see you. No pressure, just thinking of you. I put the phone aside. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel angry thinking about Diana. Just tired, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of hope that she was truly trying. Forgiveness doesn't happen all at once. It's not a switch you flip. It's 1,000 small choices. It's waking up and deciding not to let anger consume you. It's seeing a message and not feeling your stomach churn. It's slowly learning to trust again, not necessarily them, but yourself. The cafe door opened and Ryan walked in. He saw me, hesitated, then walked to my table. "Hi," he said. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. 6 months of individual and couples therapy had changed Ryan. He seemed lighter somehow, but also more serious, as if he had finally understood the weight of what he did. "How are you?" he asked. "Better," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but I'm better." "Me too," he said. Dr. Patterson helped me understand a lot of things. About why I was so susceptible to Diana's manipulation. About my own codependency issues. He looked at his hands. "It doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it. But it helps me understand how I got there." "I know," I said. "My therapist helped me understand too. How I missed signs. How I doubted myself when I should have trusted my instincts." We sat in silence for a moment, just drinking coffee, watching the city wake up through the window. "The divorce papers are ready," Ryan said finally. "My lawyer prepared them. You can review them whenever you want. I won't fight for anything. The house is yours, the joint account is yours, everything." "Ryan, no," he interrupted gently. "You deserve this. After everything I did, it's the least." I looked at him, the man I loved for 12 years, the man who betrayed me for 3, the man who was now trying to make amends the only way he knew how. "I don't want everything," I said. "I want what's fair. I want to divide it so we can both start over with added financial resentment to the emotional." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "You were always the better person." "No," I corrected. "I just learned that revenge doesn't make me feel better. Justice does, but not revenge." My phone vibrated again. This time it was Jackson. "Marcus and I are getting coffee. Want to join us? We're at Carmela's." I showed the message to Ryan. "Jackson and Marcus. They've reconnected. They're rebuilding their friendship." "That's good," Ryan said genuinely. "They deserve it. After everything Diana did?" "Yes," I agreed. "They deserve it." I stood up, grabbed my bag. "I'm going to meet them." You'll be okay." "I will," he said. "And Melissa, thank you for giving me the chance to at least try to explain, for not completely hating me." "I don't hate you," I said honestly. "I hate what you did. But you were manipulated by someone very good at manipulating. That doesn't absolve you, but it also doesn't make you a monster." I left the cafe, the cold January air burning my lungs in a way that felt cleansing. I walked through the historic streets of Charleston, past old houses and well-kept gardens, until I reached Carmela's. Jackson and Marcus were sitting at a table near the window, laughing at something. Seeing them together again, after 5 years of separation caused by lies, made something in my chest loosen. "Melissa," Jackson waved. "Come, sit." I sat down, and Marcus handed me a coffee already prepared. "Almond milk latte, right?" "You remember," I said, surprised. "Of course," he said. "You always ordered that at Jackson's parties before. There's a strange beauty in rebuilding broken connections. They don't go back to what they were, that's impossible, but they become something new, something that carries scars but also wisdom, something stronger for having been broken and mended." "How was the meeting with Ryan?" Jackson asked. "Difficult," I admitted, "but necessary. We're finalizing the divorce, amicably, surprisingly." "And Diana?" Marcus asked carefully. "Completed the program," I said. "Mom says she's different, really working on herself." But I stopped, trying to find the words. "I'm not ready to see it yet." "You don't have to be," Jackson said. "Healing has no timeline, and you have the right to protect your peace." "She sent me a letter," Marcus said suddenly. 2 weeks ago, apologizing. Not justifying, not explaining, just apologizing. And I didn't reply," he said, "because I don't know what to say. Part of me wants to believe she changed. Another part," he stopped. Another part will always be that scared guy she threatened to destroy. That's valid, I said. Both parts are valid. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just drinking coffee and watching Charleston wake up. You know what's funny? Jackson said finally. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be here having coffee with Marcus and Melissa, all of us having been destroyed by the same person, I wouldn't have believed it. And now? I asked. Now I'm grateful, he said. Not for the pain, never for the pain, but for what came after, for the truth, for the real connection we're building. Marcus nodded. It's strange to be grateful for being broken, but sometimes you need to break completely to be able to rebuild properly. There's a difference between being broken by someone and using that brokenness to rebuild yourself stronger. The first is trauma. The second is healing. And healing is a choice you make every day. My phone vibrated again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. Melissa? The voice was Diana's, but different, softer, less performative. I know you don't want to talk to me. I understand. But I needed to say something. I stayed silent, waiting. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness, she continued. I don't expect it. I don't deserve it. I'm calling to say you were right about everything. I used my trauma as a weapon. I destroyed people because I was destroyed. And that, her voice broke, that made me as bad as Dad. In different ways, but equally destructive. Diana, I began, but she continued. I'm working on it, really working. Not therapy I control, real therapy where I have to face horrible things about myself. And she stopped, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than surviving the abuse, because surviving was something done to me. Healing is something I have to choose to do. Tears streamed down my face now. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Diana said. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be different. Not for you, not for Mom or James, for me, because I don't want to be that person anymore. She hung up before I could reply. Jackson and Marcus were looking at me, concern on their faces. Are you okay? Jackson asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but I think she might actually be trying this time. And if she is, Marcus asked, what does that change? Nothing, I said, and everything. It doesn't change what she did. It doesn't erase the pain. But maybe, it means that someday, years from now, we can be in the same room without me feeling like screaming. Is that forgiveness? Jackson asked. No, I said. It's acceptance. Acceptance that she is human, flawed, capable of change, but also of relapse. And acceptance that my healing doesn't depend on her. It depends on me. Forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about you. It's about deciding that you will no longer carry the weight of their anger, not because they deserve to be forgiven, but because you deserve to be free. 3 months later, I was on the balcony of my new house, smaller than the one I shared with Ryan, but mine, completely mine. The smell of fresh paint still lingered in the air. Boxes still waited to be unpacked, but it was a beginning. Mom appeared with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Thought you could use some company. Always, I said, smiling. We sat in silence for a moment, drinking wine, watching the sun set over Charleston. Diana's coming for dinner Sunday, Mom said carefully. Nothing big, just her and me, but she asked if you would be there. I took a deep breath. I don't know if I'm ready. You don't have to be, Mom said, but she is different, Mel, really different. Still fragile, still working, but different. What if she relapses? I asked. What if all of this is just another manipulation? Then we deal with it, Mom said, but we can't live in fear of what if. We can only deal with what is. I looked at my mother, this strong woman who carried guilt for years, who finally learned to love without overprotecting, who was trying to rebuild relationships with both her daughters. It's okay, I said. I'll go. But if at any moment I feel like it's too much, you leave, Mom completed. No guilt, no explanation, you just leave. Thank you, I said. Sunday came faster than I expected. I was at my mom's front door, hand on the doorknob, heart beating fast. There's a specific courage needed to face someone who hurt you deeply. Not the courage to confront or fight, the courage to be vulnerable again, to risk being hurt again. It's the hardest courage of all. I opened the door. Diana was in the kitchen, helping Mom with dinner. She saw me and froze, dishcloth in hand, eyes wide. "Hi," she said, and her voice was small, uncertain. "Hi," I replied. We stood there, sisters separated by 3 feet of space and years of betrayal, just looking at each other. "You cut your hair," I said finally. "Yes," she touched the short strands. "Thought it was time for a change, not to hide behind things. It looks good on you." "Thank you." Uncomfortable silence. Mom watched us, waiting. "Melissa," Diana began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to be sisters again. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see everything I did. And I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it, but it's all I have." I looked at her, really looked, and I saw something different. Not the performative victim, not the calculating manipulator, just Diana. Broken, trying to put herself back together, scared to fail. "I know," I said, "and I don't know if I can forgive. Not yet. Maybe never completely. But I can try to be in the same room. I can try not to hate you." "That's more than I deserve," she said, tears streaming. "Yes," I agreed. "It is. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Because carrying hatred is heavy, and I'm tired of carrying weight that isn't mine." We had dinner together, uncomfortable at first, but gradually easier. Diana didn't try to justify, didn't try to explain. She just existed, quiet and humble, in a way I had never seen. As I was leaving, she stopped me at the door. "Mel, thank you for coming, for trying. I know how much this cost." "It cost everything," I said honestly. "But maybe someday it will cost less." "I hope so," she said. "For you, not for me. You deserve peace." I drove home through the streets of Charleston, windows open, cold night air filling the car. And for the first time in a year, I felt something that might be peace. It wasn't complete forgiveness, it wasn't forgetting, but it was acceptance. It was the understanding that people are complex, that trauma can explain but not excuse, that healing is possible but not guaranteed. It was the understanding that I could choose not to let Diana's betrayal define me, that I could build a new life, new relationships, a new version of myself that was stronger for having been broken. The revenge I brought wasn't about destroying Diana. It was about destroying the lies, about exposing the truth so completely that she could no longer hide. And sometimes that's the most powerful revenge, not destroying the person, but destroying the false narrative they built. Because without the narrative, they have to finally look in the mirror and see who they truly are. And for someone like Diana, that's more devastating than any external punishment could be. This story shows us that trauma is not an excuse for cruelty, that pain does not give you the right to hurt others, that emotional manipulation is abuse, even when it comes from someone who has been abused. But it also shows us that healing is possible, not easy, not fast, not guaranteed, but possible. That people can change if they truly want to. That forgiveness is not about absolving the aggressor, but about freeing the victim. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction, it is truth. It is exposing lies so completely that they can no longer exist. It is refusing to carry guilt that isn't yours. It is choosing to heal instead of remaining bitter. If this story touched you, if you have ever been manipulated by someone who used trauma as a weapon, no, you are not alone. Your pain is valid, your anger is valid, and your choice to heal, in your own time, in your own way, is also valid. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that challenge, that heal, that show the complexity of the human experience. Leave in the comments, have you experienced emotional manipulation? How did you heal? And always remember, you are not responsible for the pain others cause, but you are responsible for your own healing, and healing is the most powerful revenge of all. Final question for reflection. When does trauma become an excuse instead of an explanation? And where is the line between compassion and complicity?